This is Inside Urology, Cutting to the Chase, a podcast from the Indiana University School of Medicine Department of Urology. We talk about all things urology with Dr. Clint Carey. Each episode features conversations with physicians, researchers, patients, and we'll share some of the stories shaping the field. So let's cut right to the chase. Welcome in to Inside Urology, Cutting to the Chase, Episode 6. I'm here with Dr. Clint Carey, the chair of our department, and you and I have really been looking forward to this episode. We've been talking about having Ethan on for quite a while now, and he's one of your former patients. Mm-hmm. Ethan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
And you're currently in Hawaii as a rescue swimmer for the Coast Guard, which is awesome. I'm sure you have a lot of cool things to tell us and things to get into. But if you could, take us back to when you were first diagnosed with testicular cancer. What age were you? What were you doing in life?
Yeah, so that was February 2019. I was 19. It was probably, 2 weeks before the SEC championship?
Yeah, 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, so I was swimming for Texas A&M, and we were gearing up to go to the SEC championships. I was a freshman on the team.
One of the biggest meets.
Yeah, and that was definitely would have been the biggest meet I had gone to, and I found, a little something weird going on in my body, went to the doctor and got that news about 2 weeks before that meet, and yeah, that was just pretty much where I was.
Yeah, he texted me that he found a lump, and I'm a family physician, so he was like, I figured it's probably just a cyst or something, and I expedited a ultrasound really quickly, and it was a solid lump, and I got him into urology like the next day, and this was before he was selected for this very prestigious meet to go to, and he didn't want to miss the meet, but the urologist was like, let's do the surgery tomorrow, and it was up to Ethan, and he was of age to make his own decision. So against my opinion, he went ahead and postponed the surgery for a few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, until after this big swim meet. And he swam very well at it.
Ethan, did you even think this was anything serious at that time?
I mean, so when I first found the lump, I didn't think it was serious at all. I was joking about it with my teammates, and just like, making no big deal out of it. And then I remember I was in the locker room, like, talking about it, and one teammate, and I still talk with him about this because it was like, he was definitely the reason that I went and like told my dad and saw a doctor. Is I was joking about it, and he was like looking at, like, giving me a funny look, and I was like, what? And he was like, dude, you need to go to a doctor. Like, that's no joke. And I was like, dang, he's probably right. So I texted my dad, went to the doctor the next day or day after that. And but at first I definitely did not think it was any big deal.
But it had grown about a centimeter or so in those couple of weeks between diagnosis and after the swim meet.
I mean, the SEC championship swim meet, I mean, that's a obviously there's a lot of good athletes at that, and preparing for that, not just physically, but mentally, on top of this kind of hanging over your head about what was going to happen. How did you either block that out, or how did you process that at the time?
I mean, well, so SEC championships, the way it works for our swim team was we had about like 35 guys on our roster, and we were only, and that's including divers. So, and then we're only allowed to take 21 athletes, and that is also including divers. So they usually take about 3 or 4 divers. So as on the swim team side, there's only 18 of us out of like 35 guys that get to go. And I was a freshman. I had just gotten there. I had a really good mid-season meet, and I got invited to go, and I was super excited about it. And it was like, basically that was like the pinnacle of my goals for that season, was just to go to SECs, not even final or place or do anything crazy, just go. And I got that news, and I just worked so hard for it that I was like, if I can postpone the surgery, I want to. And it's basically, as soon as I got that green light, it kind of fell to the back of my mind. Like, it in my mind at that point, it was still serious, but it wasn't as serious as it probably should have been, knowing what I know now. And I got the green light to go swim at this meet. I was super excited about that. So basically had a couple days of doctor appointments, and then this like Monday I was right back at the pool, and my teammates were like all really shocked because they all knew, and they were like, I think they were just going to kind of match my energy. You know, if I wasn't freaking out about it, they weren't going to freak out about it or try to freak me out about it.
I remember he asked Dr. Polnasic one question. He said, "Will doing the surgery 2 weeks from now affect my lifespan?" And Dr. Polnasic thought about it and said, "No, I don't think it will."
Yeah. So that was all I needed to know. And then, yeah, I remember getting to the meet and just not even, I wasn't even thinking about it. Like, I was focused on my meet. It was a 3 or 4 day meet. I totally blocked it out. And, you know, to me at that time, that wasn't really hard to do because that was like, I was young and swimming to me was everything. So that was what was going on. So as soon as that meet was over, I switched gears into, okay, now I need to go focus on getting healthy.
Yeah.
And it was such an awesome, highly intense meet. And he swam so well. We were so proud of him. But his mom and I were also extremely stressed in the background. But we had to somehow put it aside.
I was gonna ask how, David, just you and you're obviously being a physician yourself, how hard was that for you to have an idea of what was going on, but let him make that decision?
I was very hard. I felt like in the room there that I should be able to say, let's do this. I mean, this urologist I work with, he's in my clinic, and I was like, let's do this. He's like, he's going to do it this afternoon, and Ethan was like, wait a minute, and I felt, you know, suddenly a realization hit me that I can't make the decision. He took Ethan's decision because he was of age, and
Yeah.
it was hard for me, you know, because I was afraid. I knew it was the type of a. It looked like the type of a cancer that Lance Armstrong had, and it looked like pretty aggressive, and I was worried about what it could do. But 2 weeks was killing me inside, just killing me. I would have wanted the surgery so bad. I knew the meat was important, but
Yeah. I'll say that the question that Ethan asked was actually quite insightful to help him make that decision. And I'll say I've been asked that question before as well. And there are times when, you know, given the situation, it doesn't make a difference if you do this, you know, soon versus waiting, you know, X amount of time. And then there are times when you're like, you know, because there's never a convenient time to get any kind of cancer. Just interrupts everything going on in anyone's life. And unfortunately, there are some times when people ask that question, and we do have to say, you know, it is in your best interest to go ahead. So it's good that you were able to achieve the goals and go swim in the competition, do a good job, and it's actually pretty impressive that you were able to kind of block that out of your mind. It kind of goes to, you know, high level athletes being able to do that.
And you swam some of your best times in that race.
you sure did.
Yeah, I remember my best event was always the 200 back, and I think going into college, I think my time was a 145, and then at the midseason invite, I dropped down to, I want to say, a 143. And then that was, you know, the swim that kind of opened my coach's eyes, because at the beginning of the season, they had actually asked me to redshirt and wait a year to just train, get bigger, get faster, because I definitely wasn't, you know, that caliber coming into college. I was kind of a guy they were just going to take a chance on and give me a spot on the team. And but at that midseason invite, I proved myself. And then at the SEC meet, I went from 145 to 143 at the midseason, and then at SECs, I went to 141 and actually placed ninth in the whole meet. And yeah, so that was really
That's awesome.
cool, especially knowing, you know, what I was going through at the time is awesome that I was able to do that.
And after your surgery, he went all the way down to 139, which qualified for NCAA's. But that's later.
Yeah. We can talk about that. I remember I think you sent me like a YouTube video or something of that watching that he did after the surgery. I remember watching that video.
So tell us a little bit about the surgery and that day and how everything went.
So long ago, such a blur, but I just remember like I wasn't necessarily sad, and like, you know, for guys, you know, I feel like it can be for some people like weird losing a testicle, but like for me, I was like, I had a bunch of surgeries before. I'd had my appendix out. I'd had, you know, X other little tiny surgeries. So I was like, it's just another surgery. And you know, at the time, I was totally unaware that I was going to end up doing chemo, and I didn't have any expectation to do any chemotherapy. So I was like, oh well, I get this one surgery and it's over with. And remember having that surgery. I was walking around the next day, back at school a week later, and then I thought life was just going to be normal. But that surgery itself, I feel like was the most like unmemorable part of my journey for sure.
And then tell us, just tell us a little bit about the what happened after that. So everything seemed to be okay, and then you were doing surveillance, and then what happened after that?
Yeah, I remember it was summertime. I had just gone home to train with my club team Nitro in Cedar Park, Texas over the summer. And I came home. I had been doing my surveillance, like, it's like the monthly checkups and everything, make sure that nothing's coming back and nothing's funny happening. And I came home from swim practice one day, and I was at dinner with both my parents. It was just us three, and they were being so quiet. And I was like, what is going on? Because usually, they're talking to me, asking me questions about my day, asking me questions about swim practice. They weren't saying a word during this dinner, and you could just tell something was wrong. And I was like, and my parents, they never fight in front of us or anything. And I was like, did they like get in like a nasty fight or something? Like while I was gone, like what happened? And then as soon as I finished dinner, they were like, hey, we got to talk. Like we got to tell you something. And I was like, oh boy. And I still like, even though I knew I had just had cancer and got rid of it with a surgery, I wasn't expecting chemo. I wasn't expecting anything. So I was like, what is this going to be? And yeah, they told me that the cancer had come back. It was in a different part of my body. It was in my lymph nodes. And then I was going to need to do chemotherapy. And that was definitely a blow. I had really long hair at the time. I didn't want to lose it. I was super bummed. But my parents are awesome, and they just broke it down. They were like, look, it's going to be this summer. You're going to have to do it. Like, there's no way around it, but it's just, this is how it's going to go. And then you're done. You're going to be done. And I was like, okay, like they really brought me back down to reality and got me prepared mentally for what was about to happen. But
we were told it was going to have like a 96%, success rate.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, and I'll say that those are probably reasonable. Of the chemotherapy alone being able to take care of those things, those are probably reasonable statistics. And as we'll get to here, unfortunately, some people do have a relapse, as Ethan did, and obviously, you went through that chemotherapy. Feel free you can talk about the process of going through that, or afterwards, after things got better, and then whichever avenue you want to pursue there.
So I remember that chemotherapy that particular summer there was like an option to do either 3 rounds of there's some part of the chemo that was very like lung toxic, I remember.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had done that one, I could have only done 3 rounds, which would have been like the 1 week on, 3 weeks off, just 3 rounds of that. But we elected to leave out the one that was lung toxic because of the fact that I was a swimmer, and do 4 rounds instead. So I ended up doing the 4 rounds. And it was, a week on of going to the chemo center every day and sitting down for, I felt like 5 or 6 hours, but, and then going home and doing that for Monday through Friday. And then I had 3 weeks to just, live as like a slightly normal person. And I just remember that summer, those weeks sucked. I was
sick.
Yeah, it definitely really made me sick. I'd go to the chemo center. I'd sleep the whole time. I'd go home. I'd sleep more. I'd sleep for hours.
No swimming, no training.
Yeah, no swimming, no working out. I really just like played video games in my room and went and hung out with my friends when I could, and it was just kind of miserable. But it was a short period of misery. It was easy to like look forward to. Okay, that was 1 round, that was 2, that was 3, that was 4. Now I'm done. And then once I finally finished it, I finished it just in time for the school semester to start. So I signed up for, I don't even remember what classes or if I was in a full like 12-hour course load. Signed up, went back to school, started training. I remember, that first like week back after the summer, that's after everybody takes a break. So A&M did something they called Fat Camp, which was just like working out like outside in the heat, and like everybody's getting back into shape. And I was trying to do that, and I was dying, like so out of shape, so unhealthy from just doing all that chemotherapy. And my coaches were like just telling me like, hey, work your way back into it. Like, you don't need to do this. But I was so like focused on trying to get back into shape. as fast as I could. And then I felt like that also just gave me something that I could control, like just my working out.
Yeah, I was gonna
Um,
say, what kept your attitude up? I'm sure all the support from everyone around you also helped.
yeah, I mean, I had an awesome swim team. Like everybody, like when I was doing chemo, when I was home, like between those weeks, they were coming to Austin. They were visiting me, hanging out with me. I had a lot of friends that were home for the summer too. Like all the guys that I was really good friends with in high school that all went to different colleges. Like they were all home that summer, so I had people to hang out with. I had my swim team just like absolutely motivating the hell out of me to get back into it. And my coaches were awesome. Jay Holmes and Jason Kalanog, like those guys definitely gave me more of a shot than I feel like other Division One coaches would have. Like they gave me more time to recover and get back to where I was.
You were getting back there by
Yeah,
December, from September to December. He was climbing back. He wasn't quite where he was, but
yeah,
he was working so hard. And your meet, I think we had already had
yeah,
December invite, and you were close. You were like in the 145, 140.
yeah. I started to show like a little bit of promise, and then that's when the third round of bad news came
Yeah,
right in
alpha
December.
protein. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, just that first semester, I know my grades definitely tanked that semester because I was more focused on swimming than I was on school, and I just couldn't focus on that many things at once. But yeah, it was just good to be back and good to be with my friends in College Station having fun again.
It sounds like
Yeah.
swimming really helped you push forward through all this, even though maybe at sometimes you weren't swimming.
I mean, it was always my goal, always like the thing that I had to get back to. So when I was dealing with it and I was sick and I was doing surgeries and chemotherapy, that was just what I was thinking about. I was like, the thing I get at the end of this is to go back to swimming. Like that was the thing that was getting me through, definitely.
And Dad, what was your outlook? Seeing him go through all this and the several bouts of the cancer and everything he had to go through and kind of where he's at now.
I think it was exciting to see him coming back and getting stronger. He was growing his hair. He was getting muscular again because the chemotherapy just wiped him out. But he was really quick to rebound and eat and grow and get muscular and strong. But there's a certain amount of PTSD that I had, and I guess I could say I still have about the blood work, the CT scans, the just waiting for the alpha fetoprotein result to come back. I mean, that's just the most unbelievable experience. I know it's not me, but having your child getting those lab tests drawn, I wished it would be me. I wanted it to be me so much more because, but anyway, it was stressful, but it was exciting to see him coming back, and I was just praying constantly that he was cleared.
And so just for the listeners, so the chemotherapy Ethan was talking about was the bleomycin. That's the drug that he avoided because of his high level sports competition he was doing. And it does have a small risk of pulmonary issues. And so very reasonable to go down the regimen that he did. And so you did all that. You were starting to make the comeback. And then you got this news that your tumor markers, your AFP, started to rise. And which ultimately, in one way or another, led you guys to find us here at Indiana University. So tell us a little bit about that.
I just finished chemo. I was like, I'm done. I'm good. Because my parents found out early in the morning, called Jay, called Jason. They said, we're on our way to College Station. Don't let him know that anything is happening. Like, just make him think everything's normal. So I finished this practice. And then I'm in the locker room. My friend's changing out. Our coach comes in the locker room. And he's like, Ethan, Christy needs to see you. Christy's our academic advisor. And I was like, oh, boy. I was like, I failed a class or something. I don't know what happened. And he said she needs to see you in the lobby of the rec. So I change out. I go in the lobby of the rec. I see Christy and I see my parents, and just the look on their face, I knew immediately. And I broke in that moment. I was messed up, and
He broke, and we all broke. We both broke.
and I
Tears
knew.
were flowing.
Yeah, they told me what happened, and they didn't even need to tell me. I already knew. And I remember telling them, I was like, the only thing is, I was like, I don't want to do chemo again. I was like, we need to figure it out with a surgery. I can't do chemo again. I won't do it again. and that just wasn't an option, at least what we thought at the time. The hospital that we were going to in Texas, they told us, you're going to need to do chemo, because I think, I mean, you could probably talk on this more.
Yeah, going to Christmas Eve, at first they had to do, CT, MRI, because AFP was very, very high all of a sudden. And so they imaged him, and it's Christmas Eve, and the oncologist who I basically texting was like, "We got to do an MRI of the brain, because I'm afraid with this level that it could actually be in the brain." And here we are at Christmas Eve. How am I going to get in? How are we going to get an MRI anytime soon? You know how things
Yeah.
are on the holidays.
Yeah.
Well, I called the ER and the radiology department. It was like 4 p.m. Christmas Eve, and I said to the guys working there, I was like, "Dude, this is Dr. Gogulski." I was like, "I got to get an MRI for Ethan, like right now." And they were like, "All right, we'll have somebody waiting for you." And we drove there, and I'm talking like 5 p.m. Christmas Eve. They did an MRI of the brain for him.
Wow.
And I'm very thankful that they did that. And I will say to you, I always remember how hard I prayed, Lord, but I prayed so hard while he was having that MRI on my knees in the bathroom at Baylor Scott and White. But so we went home, and the whole family, grandparents, everybody's there. It's Christmas Eve. We're all together having a meal, waiting for the results of the MRI to come.
Mhm. Yeah. And then,
It was negative, thank God.
yeah, negative. So the cancer was just in my lymph nodes, where it was before I had that original round of chemo. And then I found out I was going to have to do, I think it was 4 rounds of inpatient chemo at the Baylor Scott White in Temple, Texas.
24/7.
Yeah, 24/7 in the hospital.
Inpatient.
Yeah. Did that first week of it, and it was hell. It was so bad. I to this day, I don't know if I could have done all 4 rounds of it. Like, it was brutal. And I remember telling my mom, who was there with me at the time, I was like, "I can't do this." I was like, "I can't do 4 more rounds of this. This is awful."
Mhm.
And then one random day, I think a lot of my college friends were there visiting me. My mom wasn't in the room. It was just me and my buddies, and some random doctor. I don't even think he was like, he must have been working my case, but I hadn't met him yet.
There were urologists, oncologists. They were, they were going to have a tumor board, but it's the holidays. It's between Christmas and New Year's,
Yeah.
and they were trying to decide chemo versus RPL&D surgery.
Yeah.
And there was one surgeon in Temple that could do the RPL&D, and I researched how many per year he did, and it wasn't very many. And anyway, they were still having this debate. And he did a full week of chemo, and they were still trying to decide what surgery.
And this random doctor that I'd never met comes into my room, and at this point, I had just thought RPL&D was off the table, and that I was going to have to do this chemo. And he comes in my room, and he's like, "I've been looking at your case, and I think that you'd be, a great candidate for RPL&D." And I'm sitting there having just done terrible, terrible chemo for almost a whole week. And I was like, my mom wasn't in there, and I was so checked out of most of it. They were handling everything on the doctor side, like talking to all the doctors.
That was the urologist.
And I was like, "Excuse me?" I was kind of upset, because they just started me on this awful chemo, and that's what I had wanted in the first place, was to do this RPL&D. I was like, "Excuse me?" I was like, "You're telling me this now?" They were like, "Yeah, he should do RPL&D." And we finished that week of chemo. Never went back to that hospital to do more chemo. That's when we found
the original urologist back in Austin, which is 45 minutes away from Temple, said to me, "Dave," he goes, "if I was you," "if I was you, I would just go to Indiana. I would go to, that's where they do it. That's where they do it. I just would go there. They have all the protocols there. They would do it." So we were able to get an appointment with Dr. Einhorn,
Mhm.
and then he that day brought Ethan downstairs to meet you.
Mhm.
Of course, I was the one asking you if you could do it on Saturday. You probably remember that.
Yeah, that's the true multidisciplinary clinic there with Dr. Einhorn. Our offices are 1 floor apart, and it's routinely happens like that. The advice you got was correct. Obviously, that was the pivot. You were a good candidate just because you had only had disease in that one location, and so you stopped chemotherapy altogether. You came here, and your surgery obviously was a success. You're now 6 years out, I think, from the operation. That was, and you've been doing great since then.
I still believe everything happens for a reason. I think the first round of that tough chemo helped, and then you did the surgery, and I think that everything helped. I remember you came out of surgery and said the lymph node was a little sticky because
Yeah.
of the chemo. But
Exactly. Yeah. In the post chemotherapy setting, that certainly happens more often than not. Just that the process of somewhat shrinking and trying to kill some of the cancer cells creates that kind of inflammatory reaction that can make surgery more challenging in those settings too.
So, Ethan, through all this, did you learn anything about yourself? Obviously, just how resilient you are.
I don't think that, the way that I handled it was different than the way that anybody else in my position would have handled it. I definitely think it taught me lessons about, or put things in perspective for me with being resilient, in the future. I have been through some hard things that aren't life threatening. You know, being a rescue swimmer in the Coast Guard, you go through a very, very challenging school. And it was always nice to know that, like, those terribly hard things that they're making us do at that moment, I've done something harder. I've beat cancer. But that's pretty much it for me. Like, I don't think that, like, it changed my mindset on myself too much. I think it was just, something that I had to do that puts a lot of other things in perspective.
Yeah. So, so this whole thing, you guys being here on this podcast where this came about, your dad, I don't know if you know, but your dad checks in with me. I think it's around every Christmas and kind of gives me an update about how you're doing, and sent me the video of some of your work in the Coast Guard, jumping out of helicopters and stuff, which was pretty cool. So tell us a little bit about how that job opportunity came about. Obviously, we know you're a good swimmer, but tell us how it came about and what your job looks like on a day-to-day basis.
and how hard it was to get into the country.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the first thing, I mean, I guess I'll go back to school. Like, I was graduating college, and I had like a couple of ideas of what I wanted to do career wise. Um, I didn't like the job interview, like, settings. I didn't like looking for jobs. I hated, like, the idea of sitting at a desk from 9 to 5 and stuff like that. Just, while I'm young and while I have, like, all this energy. And I had always kind of in the back of my mind known about being a Coast Guard rescue swimmer and had a goal to do it. And I was graduating, and all my friends were getting jobs, and I was like, you know what? Like, I don't want to do this. I'm going to join the Coast Guard, and I'm going to try to be a rescue swimmer and do something cool and impactful, while I have the energy and the youthfulness to be able to do something like that. And so I did. Like, I think I started talking to a Coast Guard recruiter before I even graduated. And then with my medical history, it took forever to actually get into the Coast Guard. I remember walking into the recruiter's office after she asked for my medical my medical history, because I told her, I was like, yeah, I had testicular cancer. Is that a disqualification? She was like, no, just bring me every single piece of documentation you have on it. And I walked into the box that big with just, like, filled with pieces of paper. And I was like, oh, she had to go, that poor lady had to go through all of it. But she did. I guess they really wanted to let me join the Coast Guard.
They were low on recruiting, so thankfully they planted a good time.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I got in and went to boot camp in December of 2000. No, I graduated. I went there in October of 2023, graduated December. And then just started training to be a rescue swimmer, which is, a lot of working out. It's takes a long time to get there. And I think a year, almost 2 years into being in the Coast Guard is when I graduated rescue swimmer school.
Yeah, that's a 6-month, very highly specialized school, and to get invited to that, first they bring you there for a week. But the flight surgeon, you think the getting into the Coast Guard,
Oh, yeah.
the flight surgeon had to clear him medically also.
Yeah.
That was like all over again. That took forever.
Yeah, that took probably 6 months to get all that cleared. And then I had also just finished the, 5-year surveillance. It was like, oh, in 5 years, I'm, like, actually cancer free. I'm not in remission anymore. All those surveillance appointments, the MRIs and the blood work, that was all done. And the flight surgeon, that was, like, at that time that I was going through the flight surgeon to get cleared to go to this to rescue swimmer school. And he tells me, oh yeah, like, every year that you're a rescue swimmer and you're in a flight status, you're gonna have to get a CT scan, an MRI, and blood work. And I was like, dude, I just finished all this. And I hated it. And, but I sucked it up and I did it, and still doing that.
Well, I'm so interested in what you do. So are you actually like jumping out of planes and helicopters, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so I've been in Hawaii. I graduated top of my class in rescue swimmer school, so I got first pick of the units. And the best pick in our class was Hawaii. It's like a dream pick. So I got to go to Hawaii. And I've been here, I think, 8 months. And then now my day-to-day basis. So the actual job title of rescue swimmers in the Coast Guard is AST, Aviation Survival Technician. So mainly what we do on a day-to-day basis is we're doing maintenance on life support equipment for the helicopters. So like the rafts, the oxygen bottles, all the crew, like in the worst case scenario, the helicopter crashes, all the things that the crew would use to stay alive is like what we maintain. And then your collateral duty as an AST is the rescue swimmer. So you're standing duty. I stand duty probably 5 times a month, and then you're the guy, the rescue swimmer on duty. So if there's a SAR case, you get
Search and rescue.
search and rescue case. You get the call and you go out and you're jumping out of helicopters. You're lowering down on vertical surfaces and hoisting people up off like crazy places. And then we train for that all the time. I'm flying multiple times a week, going on trainer flights, hoisting down to boats or jumping into the water. We have little dummies we throw out, and I go practice saving them. Yeah, it's an awesome job.
Maybe there's another young guy out there listening to this. What would you tell them about, just making sure that they're checking themselves out and not being afraid to really speak up when they see something or feel something?
Going back to what I said about how I wasn't taking it seriously at first, after everything I've been through, your health and men's health in general, and things that could be awkward to talk to a doctor about. Yeah, I've got a lump on my testicle. Those are things to 100% be taken seriously. Check yourself monthly. If you feel anything weird, ask a question. The amount of times that I've had guys that know that I've had testicular cancer reach out to me and say, dude, I felt like a little, like, I don't want to bother you, but I felt like a little something on my testicle. And I'm like, well, first of all, I'm not a doctor. Go talk to a doctor. But second of all, yeah, reach out to people. Like, reach out to me. I'll tell you, hey, go see a doctor, because if you have a lump on your testicle, it's something serious. Just take it seriously.
Let's get a simple ultrasound,
Yeah, I mean, who knows, like, if I could have avoided RPL&D and chemotherapy if I had found it 2 weeks earlier and didn't go to the swimming and had the surgery or the chemotherapy or the orchiectomy. And, obviously those are my choices, but some guys might make the choice to have it right away, and you could save yourself months and months of terrible chemo and months and months of terrible surgery. It's like, just get it done.
Yeah, we'll never know.
Yeah. I think you said it earlier. Even though you might not have taken it very seriously, you were talking about it with your friends, and it actually was your friend that said, hey, that doesn't sound right, and gave you the same advice.
Yeah, and that's just me being lucky that I had a group of friends that I was comfortable making jokes about stupid stuff like that, or what I considered at the time stupid stuff like that. And then somebody to be there and say, hey, dude, that's something serious. Go check it out. And, who knows how long I would have waited to tell my dad if he didn't say that.
Yeah. And I think this is a good discussion to have. I know we're having this discussion in March, and this will likely come out in April, which for those who don't know, April is Testicular Cancer Awareness Month. So this is a very timely discussion and good advice for sure.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much. You guys are awesome.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Inside Urology. Make sure to follow, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who might like an inside look at the world of urology. And stay tuned as we keep cutting to the chase.